All right, so Tennessee handed Alabama its second loss of the season this past Saturday in Neyland Stadium. And before I credit anyone else, I want to acknowledge a unit that wasn't even on the field for Tennessee on Saturday. They were up in the stands. It was the 12th man, Tennessee's fans. They generated an absolutely deafening atmosphere at Neyland Stadium, and it caused a lot of communication issues for Alabama. Those Tennessee fans were a significant reason why Tennessee was able to secure this win. I want to acknowledge the fans because they really are part of the team. They really are. They can provide a significant edge to home teams, and they are a large reason why Tennessee was able to pull this win off because it was so loud in Neyland's. It made Alabama get very flustered at times in this game, caused communication issues. And so, without those fans, does Tennessee still win this game? I'm not sure. I can't speculate on that. I can only acknowledge the presence that they had this Saturday in Neyland. So caps off to those passionate Tennessee fans. Let's talk Tennessee first in this video. It was a great win. It was a gritty win. It was a foundational win for the 2024 season for the Vols. However, this team still has a lot to work on. Much of Saturday's performance was very sloppy, very unrefined. Tennessee still had 11 penalties, which is incredibly undisciplined. You never really want to go above 6 or 7. It's just not a good look. But I think that the ultimate conclusion that I can draw from Tennessee's performance against Alabama this past Saturday was that they have to lean more into what works, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I felt like Tennessee was trying to hit that home run ball so much early in this game. They kept trying to force it and force it and force it, trying to hit that deep bomb, trying to get that home run ball, trying to get that 75-yard touchdown for Nico. But it just wasn't hitting. He just wasn't connecting with those receivers deep. He was either overthrowing the ball or putting it just out of reach. And it was just like trying to fit a square peg through a round hole. It just wasn't there. The Tennessee receivers were getting open, but Nico's passes were just a little bit off. And that's because he just wasn't in rhythm yet. He was still a little bit shaky. However, in the second half, Tennessee did what great teams do. They made adjustments, and they leaned more into their strength, the run game. Tennessee evaluated, they reflected, and they said to themselves, hey, we have one of the best running backs in the nation in Dylan Sampson. Why not utilize him and let him be the spark plug that ignites this offense in the second half and helps us secure victory? That's exactly what they did. Dylan Sampson was incredibly effective, explosive in the second half. He had 139 yards total rushing against Alabama, and Tennessee outgained Alabama in rushing yards, 214 to 75 on Saturday. But by leaning more into that run game with Dylan Sampson, Tennessee was able to open up the passages more for Nico, and receivers were able to get more separation. Nico was able to find open guys, make completions, and get into more of a rhythm. And you could just see Nico's confidence, his moxie grow in the third and the fourth quarter. And he was really threading the needle, making some surgical passes in the fourth quarter. So he was starting to get his mojo. He was starting to get his confidence. If you're Tennessee, that has to be your approach. You can't go to the driving range in the middle of a slump and start with your driver and try to crush the ball 310 yards. It's just not going to work. You're going to suck. It's inevitable. You've got to start with the pitching wedge, and then go to your 9, then your 8, then your 7, then your 5, then your 3 wood, and then finally the driver. You have to work into it. You have to work into the deep bomb. Sure enough, Nico hit it later in that game. He hit a crucial deep pass that pretty much secured Tennessee's victory in this game. But it took him getting into that rhythm to have that confidence and that vision to do so. It's the same on the golf course. You work on the lower clubs, the 8s, the 9s, and then you build up to the bigger ones. You build up to the 3 wood. You build up to the driver. Tennessee built up to the driver. Start with the wedges, start with the irons, built up to the drivers in the second half of this game. And that's why they won. That's what has to be Tennessee's strategy moving forward. Establish tempo, establish a cadence with the run game. Open up the passages for Nico. Allow him to get into rhythm, and then you work that deep ball in. It's a process, but the timing for that deep ball, that home run shot that they want so badly, it has to be perfect. Nico is a freshman quarterback, so he's still very much finding his way, still very much finding his confidence. You got to work him in there slow, and then you turn up the dial. And that's when I feel like you're going to see this Tennessee offense truly be lethal. I think they found their identity somewhat this Saturday. It was a huge foundational victory for Tennessee's offense, and I think it's something that's going to accelerate very much down the stretch here. If you're a championship team, you have to have a component of your team, a unit that's special. That's what I always ask about championship contenders when I'm evaluating them. What's their special? Well, Tennessee's special component is their defensive line, their defensive front. It's as good as advertised. It's insane. Alabama could not establish the running game whatsoever against Tennessee, and a huge part of that is Tennessee's defensive line. It is ferocious. They pressured Jalen Milroe 26 times on Saturday, and Milroe was 5 for 16 for 26 yards when he was pressured. That's strategy executed to a T, and that's having the guys out there to get the job done, to fulfill the defensive game plan. If you want to contend for a championship, you have to do something special, and Tennessee has a special unit in that defensive line. And what's ironic is that's what separated Alabama from their competition last year, was their defensive line, getting those crucial stops and sacks on third down, holding the fort down on fourth down. That's what made Alabama a playoff team last year, and it's what could very well bring Tennessee to the Final Four or even the national championship. I don't think it's out of the question for this team, especially if they start to find their offensive identity more and more, and that defense only gets better. This Tennessee team is very scary. So, very significant, gritty win for Tennessee. I want to credit them for digging in deep when things were not going their way. That offense could not get anything going in the first half. They didn't get down on themselves. They reflected at halftime. They made adjustments. They said, this first half is not going to define who we are. And they responded with tenacity. And they responded in a way that showed that they made adjustments and leaned more into what they're good at. That's what I do on this channel. I lean into what I'm good at. If I see a certain segment of, or certain category of shorts or videos really gaining traction, I make more of those because that's what the viewer wants to see. If you're Tennessee and you see the run game take off and you can leverage the run game into improving the pass game, you lean into that. That's who you are, because that's how Tennessee just seamlessly drove down the field against Alabama. Lean into what works, and this Tennessee team can be very scary. I guarantee it. For Alabama, this is an absolutely inexcusable loss. It was a winnable game, a game that Alabama could have not only won, but won in convincing fashion, because Tennessee spoon-fed Alabama opportunity after opportunity in the first half, whether it's through turnovers, whether it's through missed field goals, whether it's through just not being able to drive the ball downfield and connect on deep shots. Alabama kept getting the ball back, and they did nothing with it. They'd get into great field position and get 0 points, throw interceptions in the end zone. You can't do that. You need to win winnable games. It's one thing if you play a team like Alabama did against Texas A&M in 2021, and the guy you're playing against is just on fire. The team you're playing against is just on fire, like Zach Calzada in Texas A&M. The guy was absolutely on fire. He had the game of his life. if you're going up against that, there's only so much you can do. Like, he's just having the night of his life. The A&M had a night that night. They won. You can even say the same thing for Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt several weeks ago. Diego had himself a night. It was Vanderbilt's night. They dropped 40 points. It is what it is. They had the night of their lives. This is the kind of game for Alabama that reminds me more of the 2022 LSU game, where it was winnable. You could have not only won it, but you could have won it in convincing fashion. But you instead spoon-fed it to the opponents because of crucial mental mistakes, mental errors, and lack of execution and lack of ability to capitalize on opportunities. If you're Alabama and you're going into Neyland Stadium, your primary objective has to be taking that Tennessee crowd out of the game. You silence them through your execution. You cannot have 3 turnovers and 15 penalties on opposing soil, especially in Knoxville, Tennessee, especially at Neyland Stadium and from the volunteer faithful. You cannot do that. You need to take that crowd out of the game. Because what happens when you're on the road and you get a penalty, it's already one of the most hostile environments in college football. They're going to get more engaged. They're going to get more loud. They're going to get more exciting. They're going to get more disruptive. And your communication is going to get thrown even more off kilter. You need to establish control. You need to take control of this game. If you're a championship caliber team, you need to take control on the road in environments like this. This is an offensive stat for Alabama that I want to highlight here. Ryan Williams was targeted 20 times. Most NFL receivers aren't targeted 20 times in a single game. You cannot target one receiver 20 times. Because what does that indicate to me? That indicates to me that Jalen Milroe, when he's going through his progressions, is getting the ball and he's looking dead at Ryan Williams and waiting to force feed the ball to him. Force feed to Williams. Force feed to Williams. Force feed to Williams. Well, guess what's going to happen when you keep staring at one receiver and trying to force feed the ball to him? Oh, yeah. The Tennessee defensive back is going to sniff that right out. He's going to disrupt the play. He's going to get an interception just like he did on Saturday. That's what happens when you dial in on one receiver. That's quarterback fundamentals right there. That's quarterbacking 101. You cannot do that. You cannot stare at one receiver and not go through your progressions and not give targets to other guys. I don't want to go too hard on the players here for Alabama because there's a lot more to it. But I'm going to dissect this a little bit more here. What Nick Saban did and what Bill Belichick did that made them so great was that they made adjustments at halftime and implemented them in the second half. I can't tell you how many times I saw the Patriots down, 17-10. America's getting excited because the Patriots are going to lose. And then the bad guy goes into the locker room. The villain, Bill Belichick, goes into the locker room, makes a couple adjustments, makes a couple tweaks on the offense and defensive side of the ball. And New England just comes out and looks like a completely different team and cruises to victory because they're that good. That's what Alabama did. They were that well coached. Alabama was down 20-7 to Tennessee at halftime last season. Very sloppy game for the Tide. Very sloppy first half. They went into halftime, made adjustments, came out and had an emphatic victory over Tennessee. That's what Saban and Belichick did that made them so great. And that's what I'm not seeing from Kalen DeBoer and this coaching staff right now. Going into halftime, making adjustments. You're seeing the same things. You're seeing the same schemes, the same packages, the same plays. And it's so predictable. And you're playing a well-coached team. You're playing a Josh Heupel coached team in Tennessee. You're not pulling the wool over their eyes. You have to make adjustments. And guess what? In 3 weeks, you're going to Baton Rouge and you're playing Brian Kelly in the LSU Tigers. You got to figure that out. You got to make adjustments. I'm being frank here. You got to make adjustments at halftime. This is a capable Alabama team. This is a very talented Alabama team. You have to know how to make the most out of the ingredients that you have if you're Kalen DeBoer. Make adjustments at halftime, come out an improved team, and secure victories. And to Alabama fans out there, you've got to realize that you not only lost your head coach, you lost the Michael Jordan of head coaches. Nick Saban is the best to ever do it. So there's going to be a step back for anything because it's very hard to fill those shoes. And that's where I give Kalen DeBoer grace. It takes a lot to fill those shoes. So I want to give him time. I want to give him space to make that adjustment, to acclimate to this position, because there's a lot of pressure here. But adjustments have to be made in the second halves of games. And if you're Kalen DeBoer and you want to have an impact on this Alabama locker room, you want to set a standard. You want to demonstrate how things are going to be done, how it's going to operate under your guidance. You have to set the tone this week. You have to establish expectations this week. And Sweet Southern Brian has exited the chat here, and harsh New York Brian has entered the chat. And I'm going to say this. If you're Kalen DeBoer, you have to communicate that unless your name is Ryan Williams, you have to earn your spot against Missouri on Saturday. And when I say that, I'm by no way insinuating that he needs to bench anybody. But you need to earn your position this week in practice. And it's got to be grueling. And it's got to be intense. And it's got to make every single player out there assess why they're wearing the crimson and white and why they're wearing the script A and how bad they really want it. That's the kind of coaching that needs to be implemented. That's what Nick Saban did. I experienced it firsthand as an intern in player development several years ago at Alabama. That's the difference. Those practices are so grueling that it makes you evaluate what you love about this team, why you're here, and what you want to sacrifice to make this team great. Unless your name is Ryan Williams, you have to earn, you have to secure your spot against Missouri this Saturday. And by putting that sense of urgency on a team, putting that amount of pressure on them, you make them better. Pressure makes diamonds. They come to practice with more tenacity, more passion, more of a sense of direction. And that's what makes these teams great. That's what made Alabama teams so great in past years. That's why Alabama, even in their worst years, would be 10-2. But it's up to this coaching staff. Is that the strategy that they're going to implement? If so, I think the ceiling is still very high for this Alabama team. A 2-loss team in the SEC is not out of it by any means, especially when you have a win against Georgia on your resume. But adjustments and change has to be made. Alabama fans, be patient with Kalen DeBoer. These are big shoes to fill. But as far as Kalen DeBoer and his coaching staff goes, you got to make a change here. And players have to show how bad they want it. This is an amazing program. These guys on this team, they're absolute dogs. There's so many of them who are very talented and capable individuals. And I'm confident that you can see that really come out down the stretch. But change has to be done here. Changes have to be made. It was a sloppy game for the first half with Tennessee and Alabama. The second half was enthralling, and Tennessee showed that they were the more prepared team going into this game, that they made halftime adjustments, and Alabama didn't. And that was the difference. It'll be interesting to see where both these teams go from here. Have a great day. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you and the time that you took out of your day to watch the video. And if you enjoyed it, please be sure to like the video and share it, as well as subscribe to The Era. The more likes and subscribers I get on this channel, the more resources I can attain, and the more resources I can attain, the more value I can provide to you, the viewer. And that is how I show my appreciation for you for the time that you devote to watching my videos. So thank you so much, and have a great day.